To the lesson on exercise 1F, multiplying and dividing fractions. Now, once again, we're learning the basics today. We learn the basics. We're going to be learning multiplying and dividing normal fractions, the same as you've been doing since primary school, year 5, maybe even year 4, but definitely year 5 and year 6, because I taught year 5, year 6, and I did teach this stuff. Anyway, the reason we learn this again, despite having calculators and being allowed to use calculators in high school, the simple reason is we learn the basic procedure, the basic principles using the easy stuff like the numbers. So that when we get to algebra, where we can't use calculators, right? We can apply the same principles to algebra as well. So we're learning the principles, and I want you to avoid using a calculator for today's homework. I mean, I know both of us, we all know, right, that you can do all the questions in today's homework using a calculator pretty much. But the thing is, yeah, you'll get the answers, but the thing is, you won't learn anything and you won't be able to apply anything to algebra. So it's important that you learn today's lesson so that you can extend it, you can learn the principles and extend it to algebraic stuff where the calculator will not be useful. And so, it's just a matter of ensuring your own mathematical future, I guess. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Do it properly, learn the principles. There's 6 ideas, right? There are 6 ideas you need to learn to master this topic, and we're going to go through each of them slowly and in some amount of detail. So even if you have forgotten or you never learned this stuff from year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, somehow, doesn't matter, you learn it today. That's all that's important. All right, so let's get started. And it's stuffing up, 1 second. There we go. So idea number 1, you can divide or multiply the top and bottom of a fraction by any number you want, and the actual fraction won't change. So for example, if you have a third, we can find an equivalent fraction. We can find a fraction which is exactly the same as a third, simply by multiplying the top and bottom by the same number. So Huria might be like, I'm going to multiply top by 2 and bottom by 2, and I'm going to end up with 2/6. And that's actually the same fraction. If you think about it, imagine you had a pizza, and then this pizza, you divided up into thirds. And Huria might have had 1/3 of the pizza. And then Huria decided, you know what? A third of the pizza, it's too big. It's so hard to eat. It's far too big. I'm going to split up the slice. I'm going to split up the pizza into 6ths. So it was in thirds. And then she said, I'm going to multiply the number of slices, total number of slices by 2. And she ended up having 6ths. So how much does Huria now have? She now has 2 slices out of 6. She has the same quantity as before. The actual fraction has not changed. So you can multiply the top and bottom of a fraction as long as you multiply both the top and the bottom by the same amount. So if you multiply top by 2, you got to multiply bottom by 2. You can multiply top by 3 if you wanted to, and then multiply the bottom by 3 as well. And so as long as you did that, the actual fraction will not change. Okay, it's known as finding an equivalent fraction. So the people who joined late, you guys have probably been doing this since primary school. Just doing a quick revision of that stuff. Now, very similarly, in the same way that you can multiply top and bottom by a number, you can also find a simpler fraction, a fraction using smaller numbers, I guess, if you divide top and bottom by the same amount. Now, obviously, if a third is equal to 2/6, then we know 2/6 is equal to a third, obviously. But we're not really concerned about that. We want to know about the principle. We're trying to learn the general rule. And the rule is you can divide top and bottom by the same number, and the fraction won't change. So if I divide the top by 2, and if I divide the bottom by 2, then the resulting fraction will be exactly the same as 2/6. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And as you can see, 2/6 is actually equal to 1/3, in the same way that at the top over here, 1/3 was equal to 2/6. So general rule, you can divide. The idea is you can divide or multiply the top and bottom of a fraction by any number you want, and the fraction won't change. As long as you multiply top and bottom, or you divide top and bottom by the same number. Now, extending this idea is idea number 2. When you do divide, not multiply, but when you do divide the top and bottom of a fraction by the same amount, we are simplifying the fraction. That's what we call it. So if a question says, simplify the following fraction, when it says simplify the fraction, simplifying a fraction means divide top and bottom by the same amount to get a smaller fraction. Now, you could technically divide by any number you wanted, but I guess by convention, you don't want decimals. You don't want like 1.2 over 3.7. You don't want decimals in a fraction. So I guess when we say simplify, what we actually mean is divide top and bottom in such a way that the answer has only whole numbers in it. And very simple tip, just think about what times table are both of the numbers in. So 5 and 10 are both in the 5 times tables. And so we can divide by 5, divide that by 5 and divide this by 5. And then we would get 5 divided by 5 is equal to 1. And 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2. And that's all you have to do. Yes, Isa. Isa, if you have a question, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask.
So Issa can't talk, he's at school, he doesn't have a mic.
Okay, sure. Okay. I'm not really sure. Issa, do you have a question? Because I am recording this, I'm going to put it on YouTube. Look, just leave your question in chat and I'll get to it in a second. So coming back to simplifying fractions, just the concept is divide the top and bottom of a fraction by the same amount, okay? So for example, let's look at F here. Now we're going to divide top and bottom. Now the key question is, what times table are they both in? You know what? We want to F because it's the same table. It's 5 times tables. Let's look at something that's slightly more tricky. Perhaps we can look at E. Now we're going to look at E. Now E is in the both of those numbers in the 2 times tables, right? They're also in the 5 times tables, but they're also in the 10 times table. And you want to try and find the biggest time table that they're both in. Okay, and 10 times table. So we can divide top by 10, we can divide bottom by 10.
HCF, right?
Highest common factor?
Is it that?
Yes, highest common factor. So we can divide top 10 divided by 10 is equal to 1, 20 divided by 10 is 2, and it is a half. Now, let's say, for example, you didn't do, you didn't divide top and bottom by the highest common factor. Let's say you divide top and bottom by 5. Then all that means is you have to take one extra step. Let's divide top and bottom by 5 because you noticed that both top and the bottom were in the 5 times tables. So you divide top by 5 and bottom by 5. And that gave you 10 divided by 5 is 2, 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now you look at 2 and 4 and you notice, oh, hey, they're both in the 2 times tables. Now look, the more you do this, the more maths you do, then this stuff will just jump out at you. You look at 2 over 4 and you'll actually see half. You'll get so used to seeing 2 and 4 and factorizing and these fractions, simplifying fractions and so on and so forth, you'll know, yeah, these are in the same times tables. I have to divide top by 2 and the bottom by 2, and I will get 1 over 2. Okay, so even if you didn't find the highest common factor, it doesn't matter. You can simplify at this stage. You simplify again. So you can simplify as many times as you want, really. So for example, but you shouldn't. You should try your best to find the highest common factor. But if for whatever reason you made a mistake, you didn't divide by the highest common factor, that's okay. It's not like you get the question wrong. Just every single time you look at anytime you have an answer, you must always simplify any answers. Even if you simplify, you get another fraction, look at it again, you might be able to simplify again. So for example, let's look at I. We're going to try to simplify this fraction. We're going to divide top and bottom by 2, for example. Divide top by 2, divide bottom by 2. I know that's not the highest common factor. I'm using this as an example. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 24 divided by 2 is 12. And hey, I can simplify further. Now, hopefully you can see that they're both in the 4 times table, and therefore I can divide top by 4, and I can divide bottom by 4, and giving 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And that's how you simplify. Okay, now sometimes when you simplify, you'll actually be left with a 1 only. Now it's very important to realize that's known as, okay, I'm jumping the gun. Simplifying fractions, you have to do it. Okay, now it's also known as canceling. Canceling is just simplifying, it's just dividing. It's not magically making stuff disappear. Over here, as you can see, it's not magic, it's simple math. You're just dividing top by 4, dividing bottom by 4. And that's all it is. So I'll get to canceling in a second. I think I shouldn't have put this here. I should have put it further down. That's okay. We'll cover canceling in a second. Let's move on to idea number 3. Idea number 3 is of generally means times by. So a half of 24 simply means half times 24. And half of 24, half times 24 is 12. You can just half times 12, or 12 divided by 2. 3/4 of 16 is 3/4 times 16. Okay, so of means times by. And that's idea number 3. Make sure you know it. Idea number 4, reciprocal means flip upside down, more or less. Okay, so for example, find the reciprocal of 3/4. It means flip it upside down. The reciprocal of 3/4 is just 4/3. Now, for B, 1/7, the reciprocal is 7/1, but you don't write 7/1. You would write, I mean, you could write the reciprocal of that is 7/1, but 7/1 is just 7. 7 divided by 1 is just 7. That's an important principle that you'll make use of more and more as you get into more advanced maths. Anytime you have a number like this, then this is 7/1. If you needed the fraction, that's what it'd be. So for example, if you had 7 times 3/4, and we'll get to multiplying in a second, but with multiplication, it's top times top, bottom by bottom. This one doesn't have a bottom. We can just think of it like that and then proceed as per normal. And the other way around as well. 7/1 is 7. 7 is 7/1. It works both ways. And by the way, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to unmute yourself and ask at any time. If it's on your mind, it's more likely than not in someone else's mind as well. And sorry, I am losing my voice, so my voice might be cracking and sound weird and funny. All right, so the reciprocal of 5/8 is 8/5. Now it's important I can't write this equals to 8/5 because I'm answering the question, and a lot of students think, oh, hey, I have to write equals here because the answer of this is 8/5. That's wrong. 5/8 is not 8/5. That's why I'm being careful to draw an arrow. I'm saying 5/8 becomes 8/5 once you find the reciprocal. You flip it upside down. And so over here, the reciprocal of 6. Now, remember what I said? 6 is actually 6/1. And so the reciprocal of that is 1/6. The reciprocal of 6 is 1/6. You're flipping 6 upside down. And remember, 6 is the same as 6/1. And so when you flip it upside down, it's 1/6. Okay, now when you get to 1 and when you get to a mixed fraction, a mixed number like this, you are allowed to use a calculator. But this is the only time in this exercise where you should be using a calculator. Okay, and the way you use a calculator, if you weren't sure, can you see my, you probably cannot. So let me share my screen, screen 1. All right, there we go. Did it stop recording? No, it didn't stop recording. Great. So if you have 1.5 and try and find the reciprocal of it, you use a calculator and you press shift and then you press this button here. And that will let you write 1.5 like this. And you press equals, it'll convert it into an improper fraction for you. But if it doesn't, you can press shift and then press SD key. Notice that small symbol ABC into D/C. It's telling you it converts mixed number into an improper fraction. So if your answer is like this for whatever reason, or if your answer is like this, you can simply press shift SD, it converts between them. And so really, what are we after? We're after this form. So 1.5 is 3/2, and the reciprocal of that is simply 2/3. Hopefully that made sense. We are moving on to idea number 5, which is the main part of today's lesson. Main part of today's lesson is to multiply. How do we multiply fractions? To multiply fractions, very simple. You multiply top by top and bottom by bottom. Done. That's it. It's that simple. So if you're over here, top times top, 3 times 1, 3. Bottom times 1, 5 times 4, 20. Done. It's that simple. Very straightforward. And over here, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 5, 15. You multiply top by top, multiply bottom by bottom, and that's pretty much all you have to do. Okay, so that's equal to 15 over 28. Now, you will get some questions which you can make life easier for yourself. For example, let's have a look at, and I had a look at these in a lot of detail earlier. So I've marked that I have to do CGLM to demonstrate a few principles for you. All right, so let's do G. Now, if you look at G, before we start multiplying, those are some pretty big numbers. Okay, and you can certainly do top times top and bottom times bottom, and you will get the right answer. But remember, we are learning principles here because we want to apply it to algebra later on, where things start to get very hard. And so before we start multiplying, you want to try and simplify fractions. So look at the first tip, simplify first, divide any numerator and any denominator by the same number. So we can divide any, we can choose the 5 or the 16. And then we can choose either the 8 or the 17, depending on what works. So over here, 5 and 17 are not in the same times table. 5 and 8 are not in the same table. 16 and 17 are not in the same timetable, but 16 and 8 are in the same times table. And so I'm going to be simplifying those. I'm going to divide 16 by 8. So divide that by 8 and divide this by 8. Okay. And this is known as canceling. 16 divided by 8, I'm going to wipe that off, write 2 here. 8 divided by 8, I'm going to write 1 here. Now, it's important to realize that when you cancel, things are not just disappearing. It's not magic, right? We're doing maths. You're dividing. So when you do 8 divided by 8, there is a 1 there. I see so many students who do this. They do this. This is what I've seen so many students do. They say, the 16 and the 8 would cancel. That becomes a 2, and that disappears. No, it doesn't disappear. There is a 1 here. And students get this wrong all the time, even in the HSC, all year 11, year 12, they're getting this wrong. It's very important to realize this. So when you divide, you're dividing top number by 8. You divide bottom number by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. It's not 0. It's not nothing. It's not magic, right? It's maths. All right, anyway, now we're going to proceed to multiply as per normal. 5 times 2 is 10, and 1 times 17 is 17. Done. Notice that if I had done 5 over 8 times 16 over 17, and I decided to do 5 times 16, 5 times 16, 10, 6, 80, and then you have 8 times 17, which honestly, I don't have no idea. I can do it. 8 times 10, 80, 8 times 7, 56. 136 probably. Anyway, 8 times 17, 136, 136. And now you'll have to simplify anyway. But do you really want to be simplifying 80 over 136 rather than, 16 and 8?
Also,
So
but what if no numbers can be simplified?
Pardon?
What if no numbers can be simplified?
Well, if no numbers can be simplified, then you just proceed as per normal, top by top, bottom by bottom. For example, if you look at B over here, 2 and 3 are not in the same timetable. 2 and 5 not in the same timetable. 2 and 5 not in the same timetable. 2 and 3 not in the same timetable. So we just multiply top by top, bottom by bottom, and that's your answer. That's it. So our general rule is always going to be times top by top and bottom by bottom. But before you get started, just have a quick look and see if something is in the same timetable. And like I said, when you practice more, numbers will jump out at you. You won't have to think about it individually. Like right now, 6 and 2. I can see straight away 6 and 2 in the same timetable. I'm sure you would have realized that they're both in the 2 times tables. And similarly, look over here, 3 and 3, 8 and 4, 3 and 9, 4 and 2, 5 and 25, 24 and 6. 6 and 8, 7 and 7, 7 and 21, 18 and 9. See, so you identify, you learn very, very quickly. You look at a question and you'll be able to see straight away which numbers can be simplified. That's only if you practice. So right now you might be a bit slow. That's okay. Take your time. Remember, this is not this is you're on a journey, right? You're on a journey. Let's say, for example, you're on a journey to the top of a mountain. I'm at the top of the mountain, and I'm trying to help you climb so that you can stand beside me to the top of the mountain. You know, to math mastery, as it were. And so I'm giving you tips. If you follow my tips, if you listen to my instructions, inshallah, you will succeed. You will reach the top of the mountain as well. You'll become great at maths. But if you insist on taking your own path, if you insist on using a calculator when I tell you not to, then it's just going to hinder you. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall, you know, accidents and this and that. It's just not good.
So also, so you see question M here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 6 and 8, they don't go to each other, but can you put like 2?
Okay, so the key question was that you have to find which times table are they both in. That's the key. And so let's look at M now. What times table are 6 and 8 both in?
2.
2 times table. So we can divide the 6 by 2 and divide the 8 by 2. Now 7 and the 7 diagonally this way are also in the 7 times table. And so we can divide this by 7 and divide this by 7 as well. Okay, so that's going to leave me with 1 there. That's going to be 1 here as well. 8 divided by 2 is going to give me 4 here. 6 divided by 2 is going to give me 3. And so I have 3 times 1, which is 3, over 1 times 4, which is 4, and done. And no simplification needed. So if you simplify right at the start, you don't have to simplify at the end. You don't want to simplify this. I mean, you can, of course you can, but those are some big numbers. Divide by 2, and then you have to keep doing it many, many times. Just waste your time. In an exam, you don't have time. And there's no reason to. Just simplify here before you start multiplying. Simplify here. Okay. And last, so CG, L, I guess we'll do L as well. So L over here, this is L. That's what we're going to do next. 5 and 6. Now, if I look at these numbers, which of those numbers in the same times table as each other? 5 and 25. And so I can divide this by 5 and I can divide that by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 24 and 6 are also in the same times table. 6 divided by 6 in the 6. Oh no, they're in the 6 times table. So I can divide this by 6, leaving me with 1. Divide this and it leaves me with 4. Okay, and so I have 1 times 4, which is 4. 1 times 5, which is 5, and I'm done. Okay, so I'm recording this. It's going to be on YouTube in case you forget at any point in time. This is going to be up on YouTube. But yeah, I think it's not that hard. It's just sometimes maybe you've forgotten or you haven't practiced before. That's okay. You'll be fine. Just get stuck into it, practice it, and you'll be fine.
Is it on YouTube?
Pardon?
Is it on YouTube?
It will be on YouTube because I'm recording it now and I'll upload it to YouTube.
What's your channel?
Well, when I post it up, you'll see. So idea number 6. Idea number 6, to divide fractions, we simply multiply the first fraction with the reciprocal of the second. Now, if you remember, reciprocal means flip upside down. So I purposefully chose to use this term because you do need it. That's why we learn reciprocals, right? So you flip the second fraction, multiply. You multiply the first fraction with the reciprocal of the second. So that's how you divide fractions. This is actually just a multiplication question in disguise. That's actually 4 over 7 times reciprocal of the second. And that's 5 over 3. And
So it's always a second fraction?
Pardon?
Is it always a second fraction?
Yes, always second fraction. Some students, they're like, oh, the second fraction is a bit hard. So I'll flip the first fraction this time. No, it's not optional. You got to flip the second fraction. I saw a 3-unit student do that once, 2 years ago. So someone really smart. And then she was like, she flipped the first fraction. And I said to her, why did you flip the first one? And she was like, oh, the second one looked really hard. And the first one was easy, so I flipped the first one. You can't do that. You must flip the second fraction. Reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so random question. Let's look at this one. So 4 over 5 times 15 over 8. Now, before I start multiplying, remember, you always try and simplify first. 4 and 8 are in the same times table. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now, 15 and 5 are also in the same times table. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And so that's 3 over 2. And you're done. Now that looks so complicated, but with a little bit of practice, you'll see that it's actually not very complicated at all. You get a very simple answer. Flip the second one, simplify first, then multiply top by top and bottom by bottom. So there's 3 steps. Inshallah, you'll be fine. You guys are bright kids. 3 steps. Step 1, flip second fraction. I can't bother writing fraction. Flip second fraction. Step 2. Step 2 is simplify. Simplify. Step 3 is to multiply top by top and bottom by bottom. And that's how you do it. So, excuse me. So as before, if you have to do this, make sure you can use a calculator. If you want to, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, 4 over 3. So this is 4 over 3 divided by 8. Now remember, 8 is the same as 8 over 1. So to find the reciprocal, it's 1 over 8 times 1 over 8. Simplify. Step 2, simplify. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4, what? 8 divided by 1. Where were we up to? I have no idea why I just did that. But anyway, multiplied by 1 over 8. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. And we're done. All right, so I guess that's it for today. Any questions at all about any, or I can turn the recording off if some people can't stop recording.